I am going to beat you into the living death.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with the latest edition of the Living Death Show. We got a trimmed down panel thanks to the weather in Texas right now. Our man, the jack of all trades, who has mastered them all, Ben Duffy, may not be joining us. So we're going to get started without him. If he's able to join in, great. If not, then cool. You got a duo show with me and the man with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers, my good friend and the associate editor of SureDog.com, Jay Petrie. Jay, how you feeling, my man?
I am. It's funny. I didn't know this was an expression. Maybe like it's something in German, where I am simultaneously completely exhausted but incredibly amped up for this coming week. Like I don't know how I can manage the energy because I am totally spent. But I'm also looking at UFC 267 this weekend, going, "Oh my gosh, this card's spectacular. We have so much that's going to happen, and we have so much to talk about." But I guess we should talk about this past week a little bit. Stat of the week. The stat of the week is 16. Because 16 is the number of career wins for Shavkat Rakhmonov. It is also the number of finishes that he has acquired in his career. 16-0, 16 finishes. No joke.
All right, absolutely. So very good stat there. And Jay, before we even get into the discussion, the way you talk about just the energy level right now, this is the part of being, deeper into the MMA sphere that I do kind of miss. It's like, as I constantly remember just being totally exhausted by busy weeks of fights and just a weekend just spent staring at the computer, staring at the TV, typing and writing and, and analyzing tape footage and all this stuff. But then knowing that next week promised to deliver something spectacular and that excitement that just kind of rode you through the fatigue. I don't have that right now. I have just life tired, toddler tired, yeah, and like full-time job throwing more projects at me tired, and I haven't even begun to think about what's going on for this weekend. So hopefully by the end of the show, when we start talking about UFC 276, like I'll get some of that energy back. But right now I'm dragging, bro. But we'll get through this.
You'll get the tingles, baby. I tell you, you'll get them when you sit down. And it honestly, what really got me was yesterday, so Sunday. I was looking through preparing to get the write up for the show, and I just look. I go on SureDog because, of course, Fight Finder's the king. What are you gonna do? Yeah, fight me in real life, bro. Look at the UFC 267 fight card and just go fight by fight and go like. There's like 1, maybe 2 weak spots in the lineup, and that's being rude to Jesse Jess or Jessica I. This is that card that they go, oh, okay, for all the mediocre whatever, what are we doing here? They should cancel the fight card. Shows that we've had, they put all of their eggs in this basket, and to see Robbie Lawler and Brian Barberina bumped up to the main card because of the Lauren Murphy Misha Tate scratch. It's just that little extra bonus of Robbie Lawler in the main card of a pay-per-view. You can't go wrong there.
Yeah, exactly. And when you're talking about Jessica Iam and Macy Barber as one of the weaker points on the card, like,
that's a top
you're talking
fight.
You're talking about a former title challenger and one of the most talked about prospects in the last several years. So, wow, that sounds like a very important moment for that division. So, hardly just cannon fodder that they threw in this card. So this is one to look forward to. But before we go down that rabbit hole, which I'm sure we will, let's go ahead and give some love to what took place over the last week. And before we do that, of course, remember to like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. All right, so hopefully it looks like Ben is trying to join. We'll see what his internet does, but let's go ahead and get rocking. All right, so with how great Tsarukyan and Gamrot panned out, a UFC main event that we were kind of ho-hum on. Action-wise, looked like it would deliver, but at the same time, name value just didn't feel like it was there for a main event, especially one leading into a big pay-per-view. But in hindsight now, should the UFC make more of these headliner fights that are strictly for the hardcores?
Well, this was an interesting situation because I remember last week we were kind of lamenting should they just axe this card altogether and just let us lead into International Fight Week with kind of a breather and then the whole lead up instead of having to take Monday and Tuesday and part of Wednesday digesting. Give this whole week the ability to percolate to 260 or 276. But what we got here. We all knew, and we all addressed it as such, that Gamrot-Tsarukyan was a legit fight. Like this was a fight that this was okay. A 5-rounder of this, we could have something special here. Even if the name is not that big of a deal. I've been watching Mateusz Gamrot for years now. I haven't been watching, Arman Tsarukyan for quite as long because it's hard to get your hands on Octagon Sensation or some MFP Moscow Modern Fighting Pancration. Gosh, yeah. If I don't know the name of the organization, you're not doing so hot in terms of getting my eyeballs on it. But I knew that there was the potential for some wild violence, and we got it. So I like this. I like it doesn't have to be a name that we go, okay, I don't know why they're in the main event. It doesn't have to be a heavyweight. Doesn't have to be, what are we doing, Alexander Volkov? What's he up to today? Oh, we'll make him fight Yaroslav Rozenstruik. No, this was a good litmus test for the future of the division, and it worked out. It's just that the pace, and this is something I'm sure Ben can attest to as he was scoring for Sherdog alongside me, that the pace, however, was a little tough.
Yeah, in fact, Tristan Critchfield, our other scorer, our main news editor at Sherdog, he made an observation that it never really... I never really picked it up before in years of watching, ESPN cards. It's almost as if they put each fight in its own 20 or 30-minute capsule. So a quick finish didn't really move anything along. It just meant more kind of interstitial bullshit before the next fight. And once you realize that that's what's happening, it gets kind of agonizing.
But as far as the fight itself, the main event was at least it was pretty good, right?
Oh, I thought it was a pretty damn good main event. It won't win it, but it's on my list for the best fight of the year. And of the other fights that you would put in there, it has just as much rewatch value. There are so many subtleties and nuances going on there. I want to rewatch it. I probably will rewatch it within the next week and see if I agree with my own scorecard from the first time I watched it. Which, fantastic fight. Definitely. I mean, Ben, you're reading my mind here because now I'm going to look up. I'm on the site now, so I'm making sure that I'm seeing your two scorecards. Looks like you guys dissented 48-47 going either direction. Yep. I had it 49-46 for Tsarukyan. Like when the decision was actually read, because I avoided the outcome until I actually watched the fight, and it was like I was flabbergasted. So I didn't see nearly as close of a fight as everyone else did. So, fellas, talk me off the ledge here. And was this really that close?
To me, it actually, I could maybe 50-45 is too far, but too much of a bridge too far. I think there was one media scorer who gave it 50-45 Tsarukyan, but I could see a good argument for anything from 48-47 Gamrot all the way to 49-46 Tsarukyan. Now, the fourth round is, of course, the one that people are upset about. And I personally scored it for Gamrot, even though there was the spinning back fist to the knockdown, because the time I saw it, and I'm fully transparent about it, when I saw it, it looked to me like an off-balance. Mateusz was getting ready to go for a takedown, and he got pushed off balance more than he got dropped. Because there's a very definitive difference between somebody getting dropped by strikes and somebody getting knocked down versus knocked over. And I saw that, and the recoverability, the way he got immediately into the takedown wasn't like say there was actually a couple of similar situations in the JP Bayes Cody Durden fight, because there was a knock over and then there was a knockdown, and there was a very distinct difference there. And that's why with what Gamrot did in the rest of that round, I felt like the knockdown wasn't what counted to be a knockdown wasn't the pendulum swing all the way around. But I'm not averse to the argument otherwise.
Yeah,
And I know Ben scored it because Ben, you scored it for Tsarukyan.
I did. I gave Tsarukyan the first 3 rounds. But I felt the same way that you did about that exchange in the 4th round. It felt like he hit him, absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
But it wasn't a knockdown from damage. It was just, a positional change that came from that collision. And I was still comfortable scoring that round for Gamrot. But that's one of the things, if not the main thing, that I'd want to rewatch that fight for.
Fair enough. Like and granted, maybe just the conditions I was watching it in. I wasn't watching live. I was able to fast forward commercials. I had children running around, so maybe that kind of played into what I saw. But to me it just looked like Tsarukyan was absolutely leveling him in every way, shape, and form when it comes to the striking, and Gamrot was able to secure a couple key takedowns at some moments, but not really affect any damage, even though he did fish for some submissions at times. So it was very difficult for me to see case for fight. But I guess along those same lines, and at the same time kind of moving the discussion a little forward, I mean, who do we feel like we learned more about in this one?
I'm gonna, in light of radio silence, I'm gonna go Gamrot, because I actually for Sherdog and for Prime Picks wrote about how he had a very good type of skill set to give Tsarukyan fits, and I recognize that, and I'm not tooting my own horn to say yeah I called it, because a lot of people, rightfully so, can argue that Tsarukyan won. In that, when I saw Tsarukyan debut against Islam Makhachev. Now, granted, Islam Makhachev's here, I get it, but he was able to take Tsarukyan down and put him into difficult situations where he wasn't as comfortable. And we see that a lot for offensive top game wrestlers, that you put them on their back, now suddenly they're able to, there's a whole different, set of escapes and the whole different process to go through that they're not used to. They haven't done it. They haven't needed to do it. And seeing Gamrot enough to know that he could take the fight down and threaten him in certain situations was passing that litmus test that I was even writing up, that he was a pretty sizable underdog, something like 240 or 250 or something like that, at least at the time that I wrote the piece up. That there was also that lingering doubt in my mind of, well, yeah, but Tsarukyan probably can put him on his back too. So to see Gamrot pass this test, there was something that Ben, I'm going to step on something you and Keith Schillen talked about in the recap show about this was the kind of fight where we could have very easily argued this was Mateusz Gamrot's ceiling, and said, okay, this is how far he can go. And to see him overcome that, and the Granby rolls and the switches and the reversals and what he did on the ground, those things to really impress most of us, including myself, I think kind of opened the door of the ceiling that we thought he could have had. And so I think I learned more about him than I learned about Tsarukyan.
I would lean that same way. And my point was, like, if he had lost decisively, okay, we know where Gamrot will hang out for the next couple of years before he declines. Even if I didn't think he should have won this fight, I suggested that he go on to a matchup that's a possible title eliminator, fighting someone like Michael Chandler next. And Tsarukyan,
He are who we thought they were.
Oh, good old Texas weather right there. I mean, I was like on the edge of my seat, like,
yeah,
Ben's about to drop a bomb on him. But yeah, I guess we'll have to wait later to hear his thoughts on that. Yeah, I don't really see much reason to differ an opinion with you guys. Like, I was very impressed by both men, because they were thrown out of their game multiple times, but always found their way back to their game.
Yeah.
It was like both guys got to do what they do. And that's always a pretty impressive thing. The flaw with that, though, I think for these two gentlemen in such a talent stack lightweight division, is the fact that they both have clearly laid out the blueprint of what they have trouble dealing with. And there are multiple people in the division that could give them fits for those flaws. So all in all, a really good main event. Let me argue that the UFC already makes headliner fights for hardcores at this point. The roster stretched so thin. There are events every week. I mean, you essentially have to be the most diehard of fans to keep up with this sport and not kind of lose your place as the weekly serial keeps going. So, all right, well,
I was going to say it opened the door. This fight opened the door for a lot of really good fights to come for both guys. And I think I think what's most important is that it made it so I'm excited to see. I would enjoy very much seeing either of these guys fight Rafael dos Anjos, for example, to see if they could get past his smothering top game that he possesses sometimes, or get past the power of Michael Chandler, or, some of those things. But the other biggest takeaway I had of this fight, man, I think these guys are better than some of the guys ranked above them in the division. And that's because it's a symptom of who they fought and everything like that. But I think either of these guys, based on what they've done, would beat Rafael Fiziev, because he's not, from Brazil. Rafael Fiziev, Tony Ferguson. They'd obviously run the train on Conor McGregor. I think even money against Dos Anjos and Dario should be really close fight. So I think that there is a interesting place that they are in the division where they're currently ranked on Monday as 11 and 12, where I go, these guys would give some of these top 5 guys a run for their money.
That's a good observation. I think they do match up well with some guys, but it seems like the negative image of, one guy would have a great matchup against this person, but they would have a bad matchup against that person who would have a good matchup against the other. It's sort of this weird, just shuffle the cards and see what happens. But either way, I mean, we keep saying this over and over again. Lightweight is ridiculous. Lightweight is just rich with so much talent and so much promise and so many action matchups that after the main event that we just got, and granted, obviously we look back at their past work as well, put on some action-packed performances. But man, whether you pick them to win or not, was fireworks promise if you throw them against anybody in the top 10.
Yes.
Yeah, that's just imagine like Tsarukyan and Dustin Poirier, what that looks like.
Sure.
Just nuts. Absolutely nuts. I mean, Gamrot and Dariush sounds like
a
creme de la
blast.
creme. That sounds amazing. So there's so many things that we can look forward to from these two gentlemen. So I'm looking forward to the next step. All right, let's move on to the welterweight division where we had Neil Magny get absolutely dominated and submitted by Shavkat Rakhmonov. Now, do we think that Rakhmonov is going to get that Chimaev push, the other Russian welterweight destroyer? Do you think he's deserving of that push?
He should have been already. And I get why he was not. I understand completely why he wasn't, because inactivity. He only had fought one time a year. He fought multiple times in M1 Challenge before getting to the UFC in 2019. But then 2020 he fought once. He fought Cowboy, great fight, and then he came back 9 months later and fought Tractor Procherish, then came back 9 months later. So the activity level is something you couldn't push, even if you could show, hey, look at the things he's doing to all these people that are pretty darn good. But then he ran the train on Neil Magny. And you don't see people do that. The only person I can think of that did that to him in any regard was Dos Anjos, back when Dos Anjos was having his incredible 4-fight run at welterweight, when he went, oh, I can stop weight cutting? This is so much easier. I'm really strong right now, and was destroying people. And I think he arm triangle Magny in the first round or something. But this was a different level of domination, because this was the kind of domination where Magny landed, I don't recall the numbers, but maybe in the entire course of the fight, 10 strikes. Neil Magny is the kind of guy that puts a pace on you. I went all underdogs for Sherdog, and I thought Magny would be a trap fight, push the pace, pressure, enough volume, clinch work, the kind of thing Magny does really well, can take a a firefighting finisher guy who throws, caution to the wind and says, I don't care if you take me down because I'll choke you out if you do. And I thought this was a dangerous proposition for him, for Magny, the wily veteran, blah, blah, blah. Dude, this guy looked like a star. He looked like a guy that the UFC should be pushing in his next fight with bells on. Like, give him a 5-rounder against Wonder Boy. He asked for it. Fine. If not, I don't know. Does Vicente Luque, maybe? I don't know if you don't want to do the winner fight loser thing, but there are names to fight. And this is an exciting guy in the division that, to answer your original question, will they push him like Chimaev? No, I don't know why. But should they? Hell yeah.
Ben, what say you?
I agree that they won't give him quite the same push. And part of it is that he's a perfectly genial guy and his English is improving, but he doesn't have that certain just sparkle of personality that Chimaev has. Like, Chimaev has, it's something, it falls somewhere between Khabib and McGregor, honestly, his personality. Like the kind of just charming, like broken English thing where he just says a few words and it just comes off like really cold-blooded and kind of unintentionally funny, and then being willing to talk like big trash, in a way that Khabib really wasn't. Like, he has star written all over him on the mic as well as in the cage. Rakhmonov certainly got the cage part put down. You can argue that his resume since joining the UFC is as good as Chimaev's based on whom he's beaten and how. And they can make a star out of this guy. That wild Ushanka hat that he wears, it looks like a whole ass dead deer on top of his head.
Awesome.
It's amazing. He does have a certain amount of charm, but most importantly, he puts on incredible performances in the cage. Like, the rest of it can come later. Fans being who they are, they will get behind fighters who have consistently exciting fights and win most of the time or all the time, regardless of their personality. Like, he'll be a star if he keeps winning and the UFC keeps putting them in front of the mic and the camera.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's no reason why someone who destroys people in the manner that he does can't say a few words on the mic and be the welterweight version of Mark Hunt. You don't necessarily have to say a whole lot in order to attract the eyeballs. The performance in the cage says it all, and the domination over Neil Magny. I mean, like we said, Jay, like the realms of domination that he showed, like in the clinch in particular, like where Magny excels.
Yeah.
And Rakhmonov just threw him down, just tossed him down like it was nothing, and barely let Magny even try to work for any position or anything. He just held him against the fence and just shoved him down. And this is something that he's been able to do with a lot of consistency. I mean, that level of domination is very, very marketable. So I imagine if they try, they'll get their return on investment with this guy. Can you imagine what the buildup would be, Rakhmonov and Chimaev? Like, what would that press conference look like?
It depends on their records. I truly mean that. If we're going crazy here, I don't think it's going to happen. Usman would destroy him, but one of them holds the title and the other is fighting them for it. Two undefeated destroyers going at it against each other. Are you kidding me? That's the ultimate money. This is the fight that the UFC would be dreaming of since they lost McGregor. I mean, I say lost because he hasn't won a fight since 2016.
Yeah, it'd be like Ivan Drago in a mirror match or something.
Dude,
It'd be
just seriously, just feed Rakhmonov lines from that. Just let him quietly say into the microphone, "I must break you." Just done.
You think you're so very good and we're so very bad.
Shut up and take my money.
All right, fellas. Well, let's keep things pushing here. We're going to move on to quick hits. Let me go ahead and bring up the clock. Ben, hopefully let's get a question out of you before Texas weather does its thing. And of course I mess up the clock as soon as there we go. All right.
Ding.
We got 30 seconds for you, Ben. And I want to ask you the following question. Can Thiago Moises break out from the pack, or is the lightweight division too logjammed to make an impact?
I'd say he has all the time in the world because he showed himself to be what he really is on Saturday. He is a prospect who got pushed forward a little too soon based on a couple of wins against recognizable names. Like, he just isn't a finished product. He's a 28-year-old. He's a good grappler who's
It's a good grappler.
Yes. Almost. We almost got the 30 seconds. See, now if I had got the clock right from jump, we would have got 30 seconds.
It's okay.
It's all right. It's all good.
But just to supplement his thing, look at the people he's lost to in the UFC. Dariush, Ismakulov, Makhachev, and Joel Alvarez. Name a bad name in that whole list. You know, he's just thrown to the wolves.
Yeah, no shame in that for someone that age and that level of experience coming into the UFC. So
yeah, he's still 27. He's training the ATT. He's got tons of time to grow.
Dude, he had like a star-studded corner too.
Yeah,
Mike Brown, King Mo, Thiago Alves, like that's a hell of a corner right there.
And they were just at the they were just in Connecticut the night before with Johnny Eblen too. That's what made it so funny.
Yeah,
they were jet setting. And I guess I'll ask you the question then, because otherwise it looks a little strange. I know we talked about Khabib and his dominance and his and what he did and his legacy and his trash talk. His first cousin, Umar, is a little more soft-spoken, and you know, he's doing his thing, but he's still undefeated. He ran roughshod over Nate Maness in a way that nobody had done before. So I guess my question to you is, Umar Nurmagomedov at a very nice and clean 15-0. Is he about to get fast-tracked?
I believe so. I mean, this permanent hard-on that the UFC has for Khabib Nurmagomedov, and we can look at the rise of Islam Makhachev, like people looking to Chimaev and Rakhmonov as the next Russian upcoming greats and stuff. Like, there's this desire to have a Nurmagomedov or someone Nurmagomedov adjacent in a prominent spot. This is the guy's his cousin. He looks just like him. I mean, they were almost indistinguishable from one another, standing beside each other. Yeah, this guy's about to get fast-tracked. Oh, and plus the UFC doesn't like Aljamain Sterling. So anybody who is going to be in bantamweight and can make some noise, if you can take the light off of Aljamain Sterling, the UFC is probably very happy about that. I'm gonna
propose a fight that makes no sense and shouldn't ever happen, and it wouldn't make any sense. I would love to see Umar versus Merab Nvalishvili. I would love to see the ultimate grappling chess match between these two guys. Maybe Umar needs more seasoning. Don't get upset, guys. I know. I mean, because what's the alternative? Giving him Frankie Edgar? I don't like that one very much at all.
Not at all. That's not kosher. All right. So let's go ahead and ask a question for all of us. Oh no, Jay, I got to ask you a question.
Okay.
All right. So, Jay, are you sold on Chris Curtis as a future middleweight contender, or is the bubble going to burst?
It is I wish I could do the Bill Murray Cinderella story. Groundkeeper comes in and qualifies. You know, what he has done after what he has been through, retiring twice on one night in the PFL, and losing twice that night. And to go on a 7-fight win streak since then. Wait, no, an 8-fight win streak since then, with a couple knockouts over legit names and a masterful performance. I'm riding it until the bitter end, and I hope it doesn't end soon.
All right. Okay.
I lost track of what I was saying halfway through, so I disrespected the time. I apologize.
Oh, no. All good, man. So now we're going to ask a question of all of us. I put a minute on the clock, and I'm just going to let it run, and we're all going to talk. And why did I mess up this damn clock again? All right, here we go. Got it back. All right, for the table, what was your honest reaction to the Parisian and Baudot fight? Oh, wait, the bell. I forgot I have prep time on this because this is a setting I use when I'm working out. So here we go. Now
was perfect on the time.
There we go. Continue laughing, Duffy.
What the hell was that right hand from Baudot? What was that strike he was throwing? It was not a punch. Thank you. It wasn't. What was it? Seriously, it was a standing hammer fist, a tomahawk punch. It wasn't a straight punch. I couldn't figure it out, and it dropped Parisian. What is happening? Please, guys, come on, give me something here.
So watching this, it was crazy entertaining, completely devoid of like a lot of technique, just so sloppy, bellies flopping around. And it got me thinking, like, this is what the UFC envisions every time it puts a heavyweight fight on the main card. This is what they want to happen. This is one of the outcomes, and they delivered. So I guess they're going to keep this up.
That's it. I mean, Josh Parisian is a treasure. I hope he sticks around in the UFC for 20 fights. But that really was one of the lower level displays I've seen, even in heavyweight, in a few years in the UFC.
No, that was completely indistinguishable from like regional fights that we've all, like the sloppy heavyweight fights that we've seen in person. Like, that's exactly what that was. So entertaining. Does it belong in the UFC? Probably not. But hey, I watched, so
Like, Parisian got knocked out. Like, let's be honest.
Mhm.
When Baudot was on top of him, pounding on him with those hammer fists, Parisian went out and then came back. So let's be clear about that, first of all. And second of all, what the hell was that punch he was throwing? It wasn't.
If he did two of them, it would have been like the way that Captain Kirk used to knock people out. You would like the double chop.
Like it was like almost like if he had joined his hands, it would have been a Sakuraba kind of strike. What I can't figure out. This
it's
guy
like Mark
trains
Munoz, like Donkey Kong ground and pound is what it looked like.
Like, except for it was him trying to punch a guy in the face, but going
yeah.
I can't even mimic it. Like, this is a guy that trains at MMA Factory. He's Cyril Gane's main training partner. How does Cyril Gane say no, okay, stop messing around, punch me?
That explains Gane's wrestling.
God, it explains a lot, though, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that was something. It certainly happened. So there's that.
Please.
Well, let's move things along here. Bellator took place over the past weekend as well. They're only offering for the month Gegard Mousasi, once again a former Bellator champion at 37 years old. Is this the end for him, or what? I mean, what's next for someone of his age with his level of experience that has now dropped the title yet again?
My problem here is how disinterested Mousasi looked. That is, without exception and without exaggeration, the worst I've seen Gegard Mousasi fight in, like, what have I seen, 35 of his fights? It's the worst I've ever seen him fight. Just no real adjustments between rounds, no answer, and allowed the fight to be dictated to him by a much less experienced fighter. I mean, it's my upset of the year right now. And it's just, the question is this a one-off? Because Mousasi checks out mentally a little bit from time to time. And normally he's just so good and so well-rounded and so defensively sound that he coasts to win anyway, or coasts to a not that devastating loss. But here he just got completely dominated.
Mm-hmm.
And if this is the Mousasi we get going forward, it's going to be a real short ride from here, because his name value has never quite been up to par with, how good and how accomplished he's been. And when he's on this kind of like mental thing, his fights are dreadful to watch. So yeah, it's not going to be a whole lot of rope he gets if this is Mousasi from now on. Or maybe he turns it around and like wins 8 more fights in a row.
What kind of hurts for me is, I've been a fan of Mousasi before I was a professional covering the sport. Watching him even early on with Bushido when he was fighting like Gono and really running Hector Lombard. Why couldn't I think of his name? And seeing his weird, awkward Dream and Strikeforce run, so I have been following Gegard Mousasi for the lion's share of his career. So I would agree with Duffy that he just. It did. I don't know what the performance was, because he got hurt by strikes that wouldn't have fazed him in the past. He didn't have any sense of urgency that I've seen. We know that he can be susceptible to getting taken down and held down. Like Lovato did it. King Mo did it. Obviously, a famous example. That's probably about it, besides maybe Jacare for little stretches of the rematch. And yet, when he fought King Mo, I thought he beat King Mo because it was like the rare, like Miguel Torres, Demetrius Johnson, where he was doing so much more off his back to damage him. And you remember King Mo's face; it was almost unrecognizable because of the work off his back. So for Mousasi to very uncomfortably dissatisfied 50-45 was a weird kind of situation for me because I didn't see this happening at all. But when I look to what's left for him, there's no such thing as a money fight for Gegard Mousasi, former Bellator champion. Like, there's no matchup that you go, ooh, that's really good in Bellator. Like, you go, okay, fine. He's going to have to drop down a little bit, maybe serve as like the final litmus test to Anatoly Tokov. That's not sexy. It's legitimate, and I'm okay with the fight, but it's not like, oh, yeah, let's do it. You know, Lorenz Larkin, okay, that'd be weird for a little while. And then you have to go to, like, Dalton Rasta and Romero Cotton, like, undefeated, like kids. So, like, the what Mousasi has, he was the big fish in the small pond. And now that he's not, this is a really, really weird place for him because he has now officially and confidently burned any chance of possibly coming back to the UFC because of this.
Yeah. Here's the problem. Even if he had beaten Johnny Eblen, he'd be staring down the barrel at Romero Cotton and Anatoly Tokov coming up. Like that's all that's left.
Yeah.
The other names in the division
he's beaten. You're right. That's exactly right, Duffy. As your connection probably cut off. It's and that's a tough situation for him. Is that he would have to repeat contenders and start rematching. You know, Vanderford, Salter. I don't know whoever else. Eblen obviously would be another guy. But yeah, it's. And how do you feel about Mousasi? Am I too negative about this situation?
No, you're not at all. Like this fight reminded me a lot of Dillashaw's first fight against Renan Barão. You know,
that's a good point.
A guy who comes in, who like Dillashaw coming into that fight was someone that we did expect some good things from. Mm-hmm. Like he showed a lot of promise. But then it's like, oh, this title shot's coming way too soon.
Yeah.
Against this guy who clearly appears to be the skill wise better, the better athlete, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like this guy Renan Barão was an absolute destroyer.
Yes.
Until he wasn't that night. And similar to that fight, it started with a hard shot in the first round, and Mousasi was never able to get going.
Nope.
But I think this is sort of the beginning of the end for him, much the same way it was the beginning of the end for Barão. Both of these guys came into those fights heavy favorites with a lot of history behind them, a lot of history of destroying their body. So we're talking about Renan Barão's ridiculous weight cuts, you know, that all kind of caught up around around the two Dillashaw fights. And we can compare that to Mousasi's long career, including his time spent Dutch kickboxing, you know, which is notorious for hard training. There's a point in time where the tread is just off the tires, and this was the perfect storm for Eblen, I think, to capitalize on that moment. You know, when he landed those strikes in the first round, I think it was the left hook that kind of
like a jab really started things off, and then a couple of big shots. Yeah.
It was like I want to say it was the first one I remember was like a left hook that kind of stopped Mousasi a little bit, like it gave him pause, and then some moments later the right hand dropped him. And from that point on, he just never fired off. And he also looked gun shy to me during that fight. It's like when you just rely on, you're just throwing your jab, and that's all, you're just throwing a jab and jab and jab, and it's not working, but all you're doing is jab and jab and jab. That sounds like a guy who's gun shy.
Like Calvin Kattar?
Yeah. I mean, you're making some sense here. I think this is unfortunately the beginning of the end for Gegard Mousasi, and I could be wrong. And that doesn't mean he can't squeeze a couple good fights out of this, but he very well could go to a New Year's Eve show in Ryzen, or even a Bellator main event against Melvin Manhoef or something like that, and it could just be this crazy kickboxing exhibition, whatever. That's very possible. But as far as like what it was a couple weeks ago, maybe on this show, we talked about how cool it would be. We still wanted to see Mousasi versus Adesanya. Like we still were like kind of up on that. Anybody feel that way today?
That's dead.
Yep. Yeah. So, like Mousasi lost a lot more than the title, with this fight, and I think the wheels are starting to fall off here.
Mr. Duffy, please continue your point. You were talking about how there will still be the Tokovs and the Cottons coming up at Mousasi.
Well, just
Win or
that,
lose.
yeah. Like even if Mousasi had won, he's still in the same position. Like maybe we're at the point where one of these up and comers was going to get him. Because I looked at Johnny Eblen more or less like Austin Vanderford, like just same general physical gifts,
Seriously.
broadly same skill set, like a good wrestler, big, powerful American kid, like with good developing striking, but not a Mousasi level striker. And I thought Vanderford was tailor-made for Mousasi to embarrass. He was. I thought the same of Eblen. Was totally wrong. And again, the next up is coming someone like Romero Cotton, that broadly the same skill set.
Mm-hmm.
And now I don't know how I feel about that fight. That was it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess we'll keep an eye on, but we all know careers do end, and Mousasi has had, well, let me just, his total fights are near 60. He's like with 59 fights, I think. Yeah. At some point the body just stops doing this stuff. And this doesn't include like kickboxing bouts and stuff too. So, this guy's got a lot of mileage on him. All right, fellas. So time to move on to the greatest title segment in all of media history. I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons. This is where we share something that surprised us or ironically did not over the course of the last week. So Ben, before the weather screws us up yet again, what's your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
I just want to make sure that Jay is going to talk about the PFL playoff insertion fuckery.
I was not, but I was going to talk about a different part of the playoff out. So go ahead.
Well, no, you understand the math of it better than me. I will just concede the mic, but I want to make sure that you talk at least a little bit about that, and that covers us in case my connection drops out.
Then I'll trade you. Do you want to talk about Anthony Pettis and what happened to him?
Yes. Okay.
Please.
Okay. Anthony Pettis. If you had the joy of watching Anthony Pettis during his WEC and early UFC run, where he just put on, he went from an inconsistent but dazzling offensive fighter to just for a brief, maybe 12, 18-month span, maybe the best fighter in the sport and one of the most breathtaking offensive fighters we've ever seen. His defense was a lot of fun to watch too. And one thing in particular that he used to do that just, I'm sure jiu-jitsu coaches all over the world just pulled their hair out. He would give up back mount with a body triangle and then just spin around in the body triangle, end up in guard, and either get up or start pounding on the guy. And it was just ridiculous how slick he wasn't doing this. All of a sudden, now within the last couple of years, that's gone away. We talk about chins cracking and they're never the same. Apparently that has happened to Anthony Pettis' floating rib, because against Stevie Ray at PFL 5, he found himself on the ground. Ray locked up a body triangle on him, kind of not fully from the back, from kind of an oblique angle. Pettis struggles for a moment, then yes.
He did a shoulder, kind of like a crank kind of thing.
Yeah. But what gives out is not the shoulder joint, but Pettis' ribs. And he just immediately starts tapping, pain, this is over. It's twice now that Pettis in his career has tapped out to a body triangle specifically because it hurt his ribs. It's an ultra rare submission, and it's just weird to see it happen twice to a guy whose calling card defensively on the ground used to be literally, you can't hold me down. I'm going to spin around out of one of the most dominant positions, available and be on top. Just, I was legitimately surprised.
All right, it's a good one there, Jay. If you would shed light on the scoring for PFL playoffs for your I'm not surprised.
Well, first, I'd very much like to say how much I enjoyed trading I'm not surprised segments with Ben, and he nailed it completely. The weird, because the way that Ray torqued, it was he grabbed on the top of the shoulder and the arm to do like a shoulder spine crank too, but the rib went out too. But that was a very interesting position. That the whole thing was just an odd kind of a, more of an awkward scramble, but then it stopped. And that was a weird thing to see there. PFL happened. PFL 5, obviously, Ben just talked about the event that had Anthony Pettis on there, even though he's a lightweight, and there were featherweights and heavyweights on tap, because PFL decided to give Anthony Pettis more time to prepare for his fight. No, I'm not making that up. They let Anthony Pettis fight later on in the season, at the beginning of the season, instead of with the lightweights, to allow him to be prepared for his fight, instead of canceling or switching like they did with every other fighter on the roster. So that's kind of a weird thing, but okay. Anthony Pettis will rematch Stevie Ray in the playoffs. That's cool. We'll see if that happens again. But a thing happened. A thing happened that PFL probably will never admit, observe, or even touch. The PFL, since its inception, has cut its playoffs down to 4-man or woman playoffs. It used to be 8, 4, 6, whatever, I forget it was. They kept moving it around. They changed it year after year. There are now 4 competitors that reach the playoffs, so it's semifinals and the finals. At heavyweight, on PFL 5, Kaitlin Abreu defeated Renan Ferreira. Uncontroversial decision, good wrestling, good top control, never let Renan Ferreira breathe. Kaitlin Abreu won for the second time, so he earned 6 points, 2 by decision, because he also beat somebody, Jamel Jones, or the name isn't as important, but Adam Koresh. Okay, so the big dude from Israel, to earn 3 points. So he's 6 points total. He would tie Renan Ferreira, who got a first-round finish in the first event that he was part of, and he knocked out Jamel Jones. That's the Jamel Jones I mentioned. He knocked him out in the first round. So Ferreira earns 6. Ferreira is the guy that beat Verdum and then didn't beat Verdum. That whole weird thing happened. So Ferreira has 6 points. Kaitlin Abreu has 6 points. And they're trying to vie for a playoff spot to cross over. PFL has very clear tiebreaker provisions in their own rule book that says, in order, the following things are the tiebreaker provisions when points are tied to reach the playoffs. Number 1 is head-to-head matchups. If you beat a person and you're tied with them in points, you will finish ahead of them in the playoffs, in the playoff standings. That's pretty obvious, right? You know, that's like for anything else. It's a head-to-head kind of situation. Any other football playoffs, it could be a factor, or football or stick and ball sports for that matter. Kaitlin Abreu did not qualify for the playoffs. You know who qualified for the playoffs? Renan Ferreira. Figure that one out. As we can tell, this and remember, Renan Ferreira finished one fight and then lost the other one to Abreu. Finishes are lower on the list of tiebreakers below head-to-head wins. So there's no discrepancy. There's no misinterpretation. These are the rules. These are how they've written them. They're on the PFL website. I have them myself. I have the PDF saved in my computer, and PFL decides to secretly change them so that this is happening. But PFL is now officially throwing out its own rule book in favor of what seems to be more financially interesting matchups. Because Kaitlin Abreu wrestled his way to a possible playoff spot, and he beat the guy who was going to be in there. So that's just nonsense. I'm not surprised that I still have to whine about PFL. Like, you have the rules. How do you not follow them? I don't understand what the point of the rules are. Like, there was another situation where the commission officials were explaining the proper and improper elbows. You know what PFL bans? Elbows. What the hell are we doing here? So, yeah, PFL, I'm not surprised that you're just busted.
All right. Well, I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons, comes courtesy of Dana White, because there are rumors swirling around that Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather are going to rematch. God forbid. We don't want it. We don't need it. Let that please not be true. But in news, it sounds like it is true. Dana said that it isn't happening. So essentially, it's been confirmed. So coming soon to pay-per-view, I guess.
$100 probably.
Oh, God. And people will pay.
I will not this time. I did.
I
did last time, but that was solely to watch Floyd Mayweather style on him.
Sherdog paid last time, so that I don't get that check anymore. So yeah, so this one's gonna be on the house. All right, I ain't paying that shit. All right, fellas. See, I thought my son was waking up, but it looks like he's falling back asleep. Oh yeah, he's so close to the camera that if he like moves slightly, it's gonna fall on his head, and that'll definitely wake him up. So let's hope he stays still. All right, so we just talked about PFL. Oh, he's up, but let's see before I gotta go. Never mind, gotta go. I'll be right back. All right. Well, that was a nice little awkward stretch of.
Yeah, it was fun.
Jay talking to himself while
I was just about to roll out. I'm like, all right, Duffy. So we start at the so and so minute. We want to pause. No, okay, all right. So the PFL. All right. So we didn't even touch the PFL ends its regular season. I mean, honestly, all we can talk about is wow, Kaitlin Young is now fighting Kayla Harrison. Wow,
man. So one of the pre-PFL franchise pieces that we ran for Sherdog last night was just a by the numbers thing about Harrison versus Kaitlin Young. And while I'm pulling up a photo of Kaitlin Young for the display image, I just run across all these things of her getting mauled on the ground by Mariana Moraes. And I'm like, oh, dude, this fight sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I forgot that, like, Kaitlin Young, a big featherweight who actually, like, looks like she could be a lightweight comfortably, just getting, like, thrown around by 5'2" former flyweight Mariana Moraes. And I'm like, Kayla Harrison is going to punt this woman all the way back to Minnesota.
So it's what did she do to Moraes? Didn't she like clobber her in like a minute and a half? I think she just destroyed her. So MMA math, all things considered.
Yeah. Like the moment Julia Budd was out, it's just like, all right, just save everyone the beatings and just give Kayla Harrison a big check and just let us go on about our lives.
And even with Budd, where she'd clearly fallen off a bit recently, there was only just the morbid curiosity.
Yes, exactly. Well, and there was also pound for pound consideration because Kayla would actually possibly have a name that would be worth, beating. Yeah. But now
it'd be a massive step up in competition. Like that would be, that represented a lot more than what any other viable replacement that PFL has access to would be.
Exactly, because the alternative is like 6 and 2.
She only would have been minus 400 or 500 versus Budd.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, well, let's talk about what we really want to talk about, and that is UFC 276, which is coming up this Saturday. A pretty stacked card here. Is it the most stacked card on paper that we've had so far this year?
I get these little feelings. I was telling you, we were talking about this at the very beginning of the show. The goosebumps of anticipation. It's not chicken skin or whatever weird things people call it. No, it's goosebumps. Get it right. It's to see the lineup as it stands, and obviously it will have Robbie Lawler in the main card. I can't say that enough times because that matters very much. Because I don't think Robbie Lawler's fought in the prelims since his first
debut, I think.
No, I think it was like back in the days he was fighting like Tiki Gosen and like Steve Berger. So and even then I'm not entirely sure. It's got everything a growing boy needs. This is one question where Ben likes to ask. It's a good question. Is to the most relevant, what winner is closest to a title fight? And you go, well, it could be. Oh, well, then there's also this. Oh, what about the? So it's the options are great. Even the fights that I kind of go, aren't terrible. Say what you want about Yulia Stoliarenko. Her fight that she had with Lisa Versosa and Invicta was insane. So, worst case scenario, we get a couple duds. What we have to look forward to, it beats the rest of them on paper for me. Am I overexcited, or is this actually a really good card?
No, you're not overexcited at all. Like this is a fantastic card. Like there's no shortage. I mean, we were talking about earlier with Jessica I and Macy Barber that early on the docket. Like that's a pretty important fight. And it's that low on the card. There's a lot more above it too. Just look at a guy like Uriah Hall on the card. Well, someone might get decapitated in a spin kick. We've got Cerrone and Jim Miller because nice, I'll take it. An old timers fight. Jalen Turner, Brad Riddell, just promises of all sorts of insanity. Lawler and Barberena, yes, please. Even this stage of Lawler, like this is sort of the fight, the only sort of fight that makes sense for him at this point. There's no shortage. And we haven't even talking about O'Malley Munez and what that means for the division. There's so much on this card. Oh yeah, and by the way, 2 title fights and a for sure title eliminator at middleweight, setting up 2 interesting personalities against a champ of an interesting personality. So I'm sorry. You can't go wrong with this. You really can't.
And even some of the shakeups have been for the better. Like there's been some addition by subtraction here. You mentioned the Macy Barber versus Jessica Eye fight. That was originally supposed to be Jessica Eye versus Casey O'Neill. And I think Casey O'Neill would have just run over her in such a way that we probably wouldn't have learned much. I still have questions about Barber, whether she is a busted prospect or she is back. And Jessica is the perfect person to help her answer that. So I even like that fight better than the originally planned one.
Yeah, as much as the Cerrone Miller fight is cool, I do wish we had Miller versus Bobby Green more. Like,
Yeah,
I'm always, you guys know, I'm always down for a Bobby Green fight. Granted, what version of Bobby Green we get, but the versions that we've seen lately, yes, please. I wish we still had that, but yeah, like this is just complaining to be complaining at this point because this is a great card. Gentlemen, are you guys ready for picks? For the top three.
I think we have enough time. There was that other thing that looked good to me. I don't know if you guys want to do that. A little experiment.
Okay. What's up?
So we're going to talk about the big fights. We're going to talk about the main, co-main, and the feature fight like we always do because those are the big fights. But this card is special, as we've all noted, because of how deep it is and how many ranked matchups are really good ones there are. So I want you guys to tell me your favorite fight of the remainder and kind of break it down for me. I want you to give me your thoughts. And if we have the same fight, that's cool because we're going to have different thoughts on how it goes. So yeah, hit me. Duffy, what do you got for me, baby?
Well, if you're going to give me first pick, I'm going to steal Brad Riddell versus Jalen Turner.
Okay.
The lightweight division is an incredibly crowded division. You have to do a whole hell of a lot to break into the top 15 there, let alone the top 10. But this fight, super relevant in the division and such an interesting clash of body types, approaches, styles. Riddell, this short, compact, just knockout striker who really has had an incredible UFC run. And even before getting highlight reeled by Rafael Fiziev, was giving him a hell of a fight.
Yeah.
And then against Jalen Turner, just a walking matchup problem. Like a lightweight John Jones, just a guy whose length and size and the way he uses it create problems for everybody, and went from being a knockout artist on his local scene to a guy suddenly with a deadly ground game, and not just a guy who falls into lucky submissions, but a guy who has clearly honed that skill set. The way he ran over Uroš Medic on the ground, like the speed with which he moved, advanced his position, and while keeping a good grappler Medic locked down, was eye-opening. I can't wait to see these two guys go at it. I am leaning slightly towards Turner here. Like we were split on the Sherdog preview, but both of us agreed that this was the hardest fight on the card to call. I still feel that way, and I just can't wait to see it.
I think Ant just got saved in the nick of time to break down the fight.
Oh yeah. My son is decided to go off to a different room now, so it's just us three yet again. You know what? It's a few on here that I'm eyeing, but I'm gonna just go ahead with Uriah Hall and Andre Muniz. This is classic striker versus grappler. Yes. Like in every sense of the world. A guy who Munoz, who is, since he debuted in the UFC, like all three submission finishes, including like snapping Jacare's arm, like one of the all-time great submission specialists in MMA history, and just snapping his arm like it was nothing, against someone who has such a high-flying style, someone who on his best nights rivals the best in the world easily. This fight is money. I'm feeling this one, man. I would hate to give a prediction on it because striker versus grapplers, are just, they could be all over the place, and especially with two guys that are this dynamic, this athletic, it's anybody's guess. I'm expecting to see like the ball of dust from like the Tasmanian Devil and the Roadrunner, and when the dust settles, we'll see which one of them is conscious and or has all of their limbs. So that should be very, very fun.
I'm eyeing the replacement fight. I don't care that it's a short notice fight. The fact that it's up a weight class is actually a very important thing for me that makes it more interesting. In Donald Cerrone versus Jim Miller too. I don't know why I look at this fight and I go, we got magic here. And I say that knowing what Cerrone has done lately. Like his only good note that he's had, I mean, he had some good moments against Anthony Pettis, was his draw with Nico Price. Now it was a draw because Price poked him in the eye and lost a point, so it was a fight that Price would have won, but he took the hardest shots from Nico Price, which was encouraging because all Nico Price does is throw hard shots. So that was a little bit kind of a faith moment, and then Alex Morono bulldozed him, but what are you going to do? Alex Morono apparently does that to people. I don't know, Duffy, you have an inside track on that, but for Morono to just get there and bull rush him the way he did, I'm a little concerned about Cerrone's inactivity, and I say that he's been training for fight camps, but this is a guy who flourishes fighting 14 times a year. You know, this is a guy who gets in there because that's how he stays in his zone. That's how he's able to keep going. So to be officially out of the cage, even after multiple cancellations and injuries and other situations for 14 months is a tough thing against Jim Miller, who is at 38 years old, has found power. Like, this is a guy who never had one-shot power. We know Jim Miller. We've known him forever. His only knockouts are just kind of frustrating, like Kamal Shalorus on the ground, and then, I don't know, whoever was reffing was like, oh, fine, it's over. Stop hitting him, Jim. Like, it's never been like Jim Miller smashes some guy until he walks down Ghost Pepper Gonzalez and cold cocks him in like 15 seconds and then blasts Nick Mota. You know, both talented young prospects, the kind of the guys that the UFC brought in to make a name off of Jim Miller. So to see Jim Miller at 38 years young develop power is fascinating. So this is a matchup that I didn't think had to happen, and it didn't, because Cerrone knocked him out with a head kick in 2014. So it's not like it's a contentious rematch or anything. But of all the fights to make for these guys now, okay, I look at this and go, that's right. Like, I don't want to jump on. Well, actually, we're not going to be talking about this one. Like Robbie Lawler, Brian Barberena. That's the right fight for these guys. Their styles will match up. They're going to meet in the middle. They're going to violence one another, and somebody might fall down, but they might not. So to see Miller and Cerrone matched up in a men of a certain age battle just brings a warmness to my heart that, you know, even if one of them loses, we all win for seeing it happen, because, you know, there's only so many fights left. And so I'd rather see Cerrone fight Miller than Cerrone get matched up with Jalen Turner or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah. That's kind of how I look at this fight and
Yeah,
it could hurt us. We could be hurt seeing Jim Miller on a win streak have to fight Brad Riddell. So to see this fight, I'm like, yes, that's fine. Do that every time, and then rematch Miller Lozon afterwards. I don't care, you know, that kind of thing. That's what I like.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, this card is stacked to the gills. This is crazy. So now let's move on to our official fight picks.
Yeah.
And we're going to ask that age-old question, who you got? So, Ben, I'm going to begin with you. Sean Strickland, Alex Pereira in a surefire title eliminator. At least Dana's claiming this is a title eliminator right now. Now, who you got?
I got Sean Strickland all day. I can't believe that, at least as of a day or two ago, he was the slight underdog here. I don't know where that's coming from. Alex Pereira is an incredible kickboxer with numbing power and a completely unproven product as a mixed martial artist. And he only crossed over to mixed martial arts in earnest at like age 32. Meanwhile, he's fighting someone in Strickland that, as much as he comes across as a psychopath and kind of a willfully ignorant dude on the mic, he's a very smart fighter. Almost to a fault. Like, he's been criticized in his last couple fights for being too conservative and risk averse on the feet. And he can wrestle. Like, what makes anybody think he's going to hang around to get highlight reeled by Alex Pereira? I expect Sean Strickland to take him down within 60 seconds. And the only question from there is whether Strickland is as conservative on the ground as he's been on the feet recently. If he decides to step on the gas and Pereira looks like a fish out of water on his back, like, Strickland could pound him out or choke him out inside of the first round and a half. Otherwise, we're just going to probably see a very lopsided decision and a frustrated, lumped up Alex Pereira. But I think the UFC is, if it wanted to make the Pereira Adesanya fight, if they were hoping Pereira would get a highlight reel finish here and like have a face off with Adesanya after the main event, they booked this wrong. Like Sean Strickland was not the guy to do this with, but I look forward to Strickland Adesanya.
Jay, who you got?
I could not possibly agree with Ben more. Like I look at this fight and I laugh that Strickland is plus 105 as of the taping of this broadcast. Sean Strickland, who has more UFC experience at this weight class than Alex Pereira probably has in his whole professional career. I might be off by 1 or 2 fights, but my point.
Strickland is 5-0 since moving up from welterweight. He's 3-0 at middleweight. Has a 190 and a 195 pound.
That's
weight.
right.
Yeah.
He had the catchweight fights. So my point is still, it's funny to see how this happens. You know, when I talk about this sometimes in the rankings, how a fighter can kind of snake their way up to hit the favorable matchups and bounce to get a shot like, some guys working on their way up in heavyweight. Like they can avoid the wrestlers and avoid Curtis Blades and, get there. This is that situation because he beat Bruno Silva. He didn't knock him out. He hurt him badly, and he put on a statement. And for that, he gets number 4, Sean Strickland. Poatan, by the way, is still an unranked fighter, and rankings don't matter except they matter completely for the UFC. So I don't understand how this could be sanctioned when number 1 versus number 12 can't be, when number 4 fights an unranked fighter, and yet, but anyway, I don't want to get down that rabbit hole because obviously that's consistent in every way. I don't see Pereira having the space to do the things that he likes to do because, Ben, you're so spot on. Strickland is a cerebral fighter. Like, he is risk averse. Like, the only time he's ever been really caught is with a spinning wheel kick. Oh no, from the guy who does that. It's not like he walks people down and gets blasted. He doesn't really have those moments of getting hurt. He fights intelligently to his own benefit, to his ability. Like he never got in any danger from Uriah Hall. And I think that is a pretty good facsimile to what Poatan can bring to the table in several regards, except for a little bit less spinning stuff. But no, really, it's kind of a similar win. So I too see Strickland all day. Like I don't, if he gets a finish at all, I wouldn't be surprised. Like a taken down second round, kind of bludgeon him out, like Herb Dean or whoever it is says, all right, this is over. Let's stop embarrassing this guy. But why didn't they match Pereira against like Paulo Costa or Jack Hermanson, a guy that gets hit? I don't know. But Ant, continue what I'm saying here because I know
Jay,
you want.
I swear you've just like pulled the thoughts out of my brain because if the idea is to get Pereira and Adesanya in front of one another to fight for the middleweight belt, Sean Strickland is absolutely the wrong person to put as a roadblock to that. There's Paulo Costa out there. There's a Darren Till out there. There are guys who will oblige the striking game and give Pereira more to work with as far as creating that highlight reel that you want to slap on the commercial. Sean Strickland is not the guy. Like he, as Ben said, like he may be a complete knucklehead when a microphone is put in front of him and he's asked to share his thoughts on anything aside from fighting. He is going to say the dumbest, most vile, just moronic bullshit that you could ever imagine. But that man gets in the cage and fights like he has half a brain. Like he fights very intelligently and does what he needs to do. If Uriah Hall was unable to get his game off at the high level striker that Uriah Hall is, but Uriah Hall being a much superior overall mixed martial artist to Pereira, what do you think is going to happen with Pereira, with the exception of Strickland just sticking his chin out and lunging toward him the way that, like, say Whitaker did in the first Adesanya fight? This is Sean Strickland all day long. Like this is, and even if it's a fight contested on the feet, I don't think Strickland gives him enough room to really maneuver anything. Like he's going to be jammed up in his face and making this as gritty and ugly as possible. This is Sean Strickland all day and days after that. This was not the brightest idea if you wanted to put Adesanya and Pereira in against one another. Wrong avenue to take for that. So, all right, gentlemen, We got it one unanimous so far. Now we have Alexander Volkanovski, Max Holloway for the fourth time that they're fighting, or third time.
So
It's
just a third.
Like, I mean, at this point, they you know, if Max Holloway didn't just get married, I would suggest that they just make this partnership official. So for whatever sequel this is for these two fighting for the featherweight strap, Ben, who you got?
I don't think Ben's going to have anybody.
I was
right
about to say,
now.
I thought Ben was just very intent on what I was saying. I thought he was like on the edge of his seat, like
very focused.
When is he going to finish this transition? But no, I'm not that good. Jay, who you got?
I will be up front. I scored the first fight for Volkanovski. I scored the second fight for Max Holloway. I thought that Max Holloway had done enough. I thought he had outlanded him enough. I mean, he had just mathematically, if I believe so. But the point is I had Max winning the second fight. But it was so close that I have no issue whatsoever with Alex getting that win. It's not I wouldn't even say robbed. I'm not even in that threshold. But in the that was a close one. I disagree. It wasn't even that. It was that's fine. That 48-47 or whatever it was is just fine. I like what Max did against Yair Rodriguez. I think that makes me more confident to pick him in the trilogy. This is not a rubber match, by the way, because Max lost the first two fights. This is a trilogy match. So if Max wins, what the hell do they do? Probably an immediate rematch for the tetralogy or whatever we're going to do here. I don't know how many times they're going to make a fight. This could be the first fiver if Max can get past here. But I don't want to get down that rabbit hole all the way. I feel like of the two fighters, I've learned more about Max since his fights with Volkanovski than I have with Volkanovski beating Ortega and just manhandling Korean Zombie. Because the things that he displayed in the fights, especially against Ortega, is something he's not going to use any skill like that. If there's any ground game, maybe Max can decide to throw things up and trip him up. But it just seems like this is a Max kind of boxing striking match. So I feel more confident in Max now, and not just because of the Cater performance in the beginning of 2021, where he, landed 400 strikes and yelled at people. Whoever is listening, I'm the best boxer in the UFC. I look at the Max that we have now, and the Max that's not training on Zoom, which of course was a big gag that he actually was training in person to people. I don't know exactly why I feel that Max is going to do it this time, because he hasn't the next two times. Because I don't believe he's going to change his approach other than landing strikes more, maybe checking a leg kick for once in his life. But the idea that Max can take people down, as he did against Yair Rodriguez, if he even tries, and this is an important, very distinction, if he even tries and makes a real full-throated effort. He doesn't have to get it, but a real actual try, not just like a fake angle pick or something like that, or Tony Ferguson throw sand kind of thing. No, like he really actually gives it a shot. He can make Volkanovski think about it, which will open up his hands. And that is why I think Max Holloway can win this fight by decision, and spring what would be a considerable, a decent upset right now. But am I crazy? Is this Volk all the way? What do you got, Ben? While we still have you,
I think it's interesting that obviously both their fights have been fantastic, and the second one was close enough that a good number of people, a plurality, if not a majority, thought Holloway should have won their second fight. In light of that, it is interesting that the odds here are exactly the same as the odds were in the second fight.
Yes, they are.
So nothing happened in that fight that makes people go, okay, Volkanovski clearly is the superior fighter here. Let's make him a bigger favorite. Or there weren't enough people that thought, Holloway should have won that fight. This should be a pick'em. My thought at this point is neither of these guys are going to probably make sweeping changes in their approach. They're two of the most intelligent and best prepared fighters in the game. But after spending 50 minutes in the cage together, there can only be incremental changes. If anything changes drastically, I think it's probably going to be the accumulated wear and tear and repeated weight cuts getting to Holloway. We're talking about a guy in Holloway that sometimes looks okay at 145, and other times looks so bad that his fights are literally called off. And we know walks around at like 190 pounds in shape to the point that he can't even make lightweight on short notice to like save a card in Manhattan. All that plus the fact that he's been in so many wars. You know, even in his best fights, he takes a lot of hits. We think of his fight with Calvin Kattar as the beatdown of the year. He outlanded Kattar 2-1. What that means to me is he still got punched in the head 115 times by Calvin Kattar. You know, but we don't remember that part just because we remember the incredible just flow state and kind of showboating at the end. It's got to catch up with Holloway sooner or later. Even though he's like a year younger than Volkanovski, the amount of tread off the tires is so different between these two. I'm not saying that Holloway's going to fall off a cliff, but I'm saying if anything has changed in the last 2 years, I think it's probably going to be slightly to Holloway's detriment rather than Volkanovski's. So in light of all the things that we do know about these two and the few unknowns that we have, I'm going to say that Volkanovski wins by decision again, and maybe this time it's decisive enough to leave no doubt.
You know what? I think I'm going to have to side with Ben on this one. I'm going to pick Volkanovski, and I'm hesitant on that pick for the same reason I was hesitant for their rematch, and even the first time they fought. Like they're very evenly matched. They excel in pretty much every area. They have their own way of controlling the fight wherever it goes. They both put a pace on you. They both do a lot of the same things that the other one does, except they just do them in different ways. But we've seen this before. We've seen since they've parted ways and carried on. But both had 2 fights since their last meeting, and they both sort of did what they did. Like they both kind of employed their regular games and were able to win, even if those wins were in spectacular fashion, like Volkanovski's over Ortega and Korean Zombie, and that Calvin Kattar performance that we've mentioned already. So there've been some distance between them, but they're going to come right back and do the same thing. Like Volkanovski is going to return to the leg kick. Max Holloway is going to want to employ his boxing and high volume. And I think the result's going to be the same. I think we have another decision win for Volkanovski. And like Ben, I think this one is going to be a little more clear cut. I think the champ has had time to he's added tools just by the variation of the styles of opponents that maybe give him different looks and maybe give him some other options or some other areas where he can feel comfortable to do what he does. But this is going to be more the same with a little mix and rhythm, but Volkanovski's getting his hand raised. Okay. Yeah. Oh, and my son wanted to show everybody Mr. Potato Head, so he's just saying Mr. Potato Head while he's beside me here.
Well, it kind of looks like Volkanovski if you think about it, so it's not that far off.
All right, so we got one more fight to talk about here, and that is the middleweight title fight between Israel Adesanya and Jared Cannonier. Ben, who you got?
We've seen this before. Jared Cannonier is a very good kickboxer with just blinding speed, numbing power, aggression, willingness to come forward and use it. I'm sure the UFC is glad that Cannonier potatoed Derek Brunson in their title eliminator back in Houston because it's a fresh face for Adesanya. But we've seen this before. This is the Paulo Costa fight again. Cannonier is built for Adesanya to style on. Cannonier, he's going to come forward. He's going to throw hard. I mean, he is a very, very good striker, but he's a very, very good bread and butter striker. He throws a basic repertoire of kicks and punches really, really hard and fast. And I think he's going to have a tough time laying a finger on Adesanya. There is still nobody that has hit Adesanya cleanly without the threat of the takedown. That's it. Like Kelvin Gastelum hit him a lot, but that's because Adesanya always had to be wary of the level change. Same with Whitaker in their rematch. Obviously, Blachowicz hit him a bunch on the feet. In every case, the threat of the takedown was there. People who've just tried to strike with Israel Adesanya in the UFC have come up just swinging at air. That's going to be Cannonier. He's going to come forward. He's going to miss a lot. Adesanya's feints, his use of his length, his outstanding footwork. He's going to be slipping out the side a lot. Cannonier's going to be running by like a bull by a matador. Once he gets a little frustrated, once Adesanya starts to feel it, he's going to start lighting Cannonier up with counters. I say this is over. Second round TKO for Israel Adesanya. And the only real question will be whether we get some like teabagging and humping extracurricular activities afterwards. I doubt we will, because Cannonier is not the kind of guy that just makes you want to do that.
Jay, who you got?
Yeah, I'm of the same mind. I almost posed this question to you guys instead, as to, does Adesanya win by finish or does he win by decision? Because I'm fairly confident that all three of us will have Adesanya, not to guess what you're picking, Ant, because I know you have plenty to say about this fight. But yeah, I mean, seriously, this is a, we've seen Adesanya's style on guys just like Cannonier on multiple occasions. I mean, of course, Brunson's got more wrestling, but he also can charge headlong into the fray. And what did Israel Adesanya do to that? He dropped him 3 times before putting him out in the first round. This is just, to say Cannonier has a puncher's chance isn't even accurate, because it's so difficult to land on Israel Adesanya cleanly. Even Jan Blachowicz, who took him down repeatedly, only got off a couple momentous shots where he went, ooh, he got him. And that was the best anybody, I feel, had landed on him since maybe, I don't know, Gastelum. Again, I mean, I'm kind of rehashing what Duffy said, because it's accurate. Cannonier hits very hard, but he throws a lot of leg kicks. You know who else throws a lot of leg kicks? A guy in Adesanya who has basically stopped people with leg kicks. So I mean, Cannonier did as well, but I just feel like everything that Cannonier does, Adesanya does faster. And that's a very important distinction. Not better, not harder, but faster. And if you beat a guy like Cannonier to the punch or kick, that's essential. And to have a reach advantage, to have a height advantage, to make Cannonier have to punch up to hit you, all of the factors that come into play. And I look at this and go, this is a horrible stylistic matchup. I'm glad Cannonier got the shot. He deserved it, as far as what he has done to get this far. Going 5-1 in the division with a only loss to Whitaker, that's pretty darn good, because you put Anderson Silva away, knocked Jack Hermanson out, and rearranged Derek Brunson. So you earned it. But then your prize is the boss fight against Adesanya, who does everything you do at a level that you're going to go, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? Cannonier's 38. I don't know if you guys think about that, because I don't think about that very often. And you think that means speed starts to go. And Adesanya is all about speed and 6 years younger. So I just see Israel Adesanya. The only thing I'm afraid of is he's going to try and toy with his food and be a little overly cautious and stay back a little too far and pick and poke and pot shot, instead of doing what he did to Costa, which was not just pot shotting, it was disabling. And I feel like he's going to work his way through decision and not a finish. But I might change depending on how I do a little more look at this. But I just think that Adesanya might approach this with that big right hand that he has. I mean, he's a switch dancer, so it could also be a big left hand that Cannonier brings to the table. Just that little thing that you want to keep in the back of your mind that makes you go, ooh, maybe I don't want to engage all the way and just easily outwork him and outland him 2-1. So yeah, I think I'm going Adesanya by clear, uncontroversial, and not thrilling decision. But I would be okay with Duffy's as well. Duffy's pick.
Once again, it's unanimous. I think Israel Adesanya quite easily wins this fight. I think it's going to end up being somewhere in between the Romero fight and the Costa fight. Both guys, well, all three guys, very powerful, very explosive, can close distance really fast, and can do a lot of damage in a very short period of time. But I think we have this balance between the straight weirdness that Romero can bring, and just like bizarre cage decisions, to the all-out, just wanton, just pure action movie level violence that Paulo Costa likes to throw out there without any regard for anything else. Cannonier is somewhere in between. And this is also, keep in mind, this is also a guy who very recently got styled on by Robert Whitaker in a very technical performance. Whitaker was able to be extraordinarily technical and avoid pretty much everything of consequence and just do what he wanted to do the whole time. I think a taller Adesanya with more reach, who is overall a better striker and has more diversity in his tools on the feet, I think he has a a much better chance of making that a even clearer path to victory. So this is Adesanya's fight to lose right here. I mean, he has to, not fall into the overconfidence trap that you talked about, Jay, and that's something that very well can happen. And hopefully Jared Cannonier's crystals don't work and the chakras don't align, and Adesanya does what he's supposed to do without any sort of celestial interference. So give me Adesanya to win by either a clear-cut decision or a late stoppage. All right, so I believe that wraps things up for this week on the Living Death. So big shout out to Jay, big shout out to Ben, and a big shout out to the thunderstorm going on in Houston right now that tried to keep our boy from us, but you couldn't do it.
I can't wait to try to piece this together in post-production. This is going to be a nightmare.
I'm sorry, man.
No, it's good. It's good.
It's going to be fun.
It is a labor of love.
Just remember to cut out the first 7 minutes of the recording because we were just talking about TV stuff and comic books and TV. So yeah, unless
if you want to hear about why we feel the Shield is better than the Wire, buckle up.
Yeah, because I am firmly above the Shield, much better than the Wire. But what do I know? I'm just a guy who's just way too sexy for his own good. So like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. Be sure to check out Ben and Jay's Fight Night coverage on SureDog.com. Yeah, they'll have plenty of that post and pre-fight coverage coming from Ben, play-by-play from Jay, also some articles analyzing all the nooks and crannies of this very, very delightful card on paper. And I don't know if I'm going to try to live tweet this one. I'm going to try to actually watch this one live, at least the main card. We'll see. These kids don't let me do that. And sometimes I feel like making beats. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But either way, we're going to be back next week to talk about everything. So be sure to tune in. Stay beautiful, stay positive, and stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.